Hi, Boker Tov, Shavua Tov to everyone. I'm very happy that Baruch Hashem we are finally able to learn together, at least virtually together. And we are already for 3 weeks trying to restart the shiur, and every week there is something else, happier or less happy. But now Baruch Hashem, everyone, all are well, and we can begin. So, Chorev Tov. This winter, Bezrat Hashem, we learn together some of the hashkafa and halacha of what of a whole area that we can call Jewish bioethics, which basically are the halacha and the musar of medicine. So some of the shiurim would be more from a hashkafic point of view. So we speak about the thought and the ideas and the perspectives of Torah and our tradition regarding medicine. And other shiurim would be more specifically halachic. And some of them obviously would be some type of a combination. And I will try to have some type of a syllabus, so we would be able to go in an orderly fashion and have, after Bezrat Hashem, a few months, would have a better view and a better understanding of the principles, again, both the hashkafic and halachic, that underlie the Jewish perspective on medicine. Now, our first shiur, which is a type of an introduction to this topic, is purely, we may say that it's purely hashkafic, and it would discuss the question of the very permissibility of doctors or healers or anyone, for that matter, to treat a wound or to treat a disease. And the question in the title of this shiur is it allowed, if God had brought in the disease, the strike, is man allowed to heal it? One can argue, and there are religions that argued that way, that things that are brought by God are not down to men to treat, but instead they should be treated by approaching HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's the question, the basic question that we would want to discuss today. Now, one final note. Now, while obviously this whole topic was chosen in part because it is relevant to what we are going through in the last 8 months of the pandemic, I'm not, at least not in the first couple of shiurim, we are not going to speak specifically about the pandemic. What we are trying to achieve here is much broader view on, as we say, on the Jewish perspective on medicine. So a state of pandemic, well, for us right now, it seems a very big thing. It's one detail in this whole orchestra, we may say, of halachot and hashkafot. So so we are not, what we are going to say now is independent in any way on the state that we are now being in. So I think it's a note that it's important also to add. Okay, so we begin the shiur. I would share with you our source sheet. Just a second. And just in another note, excuse me for that also, as you may supposed to have seen a message saying that the shiur is being recorded for the sake of on YouTube. Right, so that's something that we began last week in order to improve our way to record shiurim and to keep them, and then people can later see them. Up till now, we were recording them on the Zoom itself, but then it would be erased after a few weeks. But now it would be recorded on YouTube, so Bezrat Hashem it would be kept basically until we would, for some reason, want to take it down. So we now have a whole YouTube channel. I would send you in Mirza Hashem. I sent the link to the whole shiur, but I would send it also here in this group. And you can either subscribe or you can just, whatever you want, you can go up to the YouTube And if I would figure out how it is possible, I would also upload there the source sheets for the shiurim. If not, then someone that watched the shiur can just look at the source sheet on the screen. But if I would figure out, I almost sure it is possible. If I would figure out how it is being done, then I would also upload the source sheet for the shiurim. Now, someone is trying to call me. No? Okay, so it said someone raised his hand. No? So I missed it. Anyhow, so let's begin our issue. So as I said, the question that we want to deal with is it even allowed? Is it even permitted? Is it encouraged for human beings to treat diseases that were brought down by the divine? That's the question that we want to begin with. And the first source seemed to imply that our doctor should be God Almighty himself. And that's in Shmot Vav, almost immediately after Exodus, after Yetziat Mitzrayim, says Kadosh Baruch Hu to Am Yisrael, Vayomer, Im Shamua Tishma, Lekol Hashem Elokecha. So if you would heed to the voice of God, Vayashar be'einav ta'aseh, and you do what is proper in God's eyes, Veha'azanta lemitzvotav, and you would listen, you would heed to his commandments, Veshamarta kol chukotav, you would keep all of his laws, Kol ha'machala asher samti b'Mitzrayim, all of the diseases that I have put forth into Egypt, lo asim alecha, I would not put on you, ki ani Hashem rofecha, because I, says Hashem, I am your healer. So here it seems very implied, at least in very strong language, that the way to treat diseases is by listening to God's commandments. And he says explicitly, I am your healer, I am your, do not think that someone else would help you, treat you, because our healing, it seems, from this psukim, can only come from above. Now, that is one passage. Another one is just a few chapters later, immediately after Matan Torah. So immediately after Matan Torah, meaning the Aseret HaDibrot, we have Parshat Mishpatim. Now, Parshat Mishpatim is mostly concerned with Bein Adam Lechaveiro, meaning with ordering the relationships, the financial relationship and other relationships between human beings, between people. And among other things, Parshat Mishpatim is dealing with the question of damages. So one man, Reuven, let's say, hit Shimon and caused him damage. How do we estimate the payments he needs to pay? So there are no less than 5 types of payments that someone that had damaged his friend is required to pay. Now, one of them is the following. So if 2 men are involved in a fight, and one had hit his fellow, struck him with a stone or even with his fist, he didn't kill him. If he killed him, that's obviously it's a whole other opera. But if he didn't kill him, but only injured him, and the other guy, the injured party, is now lying in his bed. If in the end he is able to stand up and he can walk al mishanto, so does that mean that he needs maybe it means that he needs a stick to walk with, or maybe not. That's up to the mefarshim there. Anyhow, if he's able to walk, and if he do not die, if he does not die, then v'nika makeh, we do not kill the injuring party, but he needs to pay. Rak shivto iten, so he needs to pay for the time that the injured party could not walk, that is shivto, the time that he sat at home.
ורפו ירפא. He also needs to pay the medical bill. So if the injured party was required to pay for his treatment by the hospital, by the doctor, whatever way it worked, then he can sue the injuring party for the money that was needed to pay. Now here we see that not only that the Torah allows someone to go to a doctor and be treated, but it also is mandating the injuring party to pay. So if I am the injuring party, I cannot say, you know, I am such a tzaddik. I believe that if you are injured, the right way to heal it is by praying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you don't need to go to a doctor. Not only that the injured can go to a doctor, he can also sue me for the payments that are required. Now, obviously, that opens the door to many types of questions. For example, what happens if I happen to be, I'm the injuring party, and I believe in conventional medicine. Now, the injured party, he believes in, I don't know if in what we call today alternative medicine. Now, the alternative medicine can be much, much more expensive than the conventional one. So can he sue me for alternatives methods of treatment? So that would be very important and interesting questions that Be'ezrat Hashem will deal with some of these questions of the relationship between conventional and alternative medicine in the eyes of the Torah, and maybe we should differentiate between different types of alternative medicine. But be it as it may, clearly at least certain types of treatments are not only allowed, but seem to be mandated by the Torah, mandated to a degree that the offending party would have to pay for them. Now, that seems to be a contradiction, because on one hand we say, Ki ani Hashem rofecha, God Almighty Himself, b'chvoido ve'atzmo, is the doctor, and on the other hand we say that no, you should go to human doctors and pay their bills, and you can even get a refund.
Baruch?
So what is the right attitude? As you can maybe imagine, in the poskim we find different opinions. But before coming to the Mefashim, one more final incident. This time not a theoretical position given by the Torah, but a part of history, as it's being told by the Sefer Chronicles, or in Hebrew we call it Divrei Hayamim. So Divrei Hayamim, that's somewhere in the end of the Tanakh, and it's basically retelling of the whole history of the Tanakh from the Briat HaOlam to the call of Koresh to go back and build the second Beit HaMikdash. So that's basically the Sefer Divrei Hayamim, which unfortunately is less learned because it's, as I said, it's over there in the end of the Tanakh. But anyhow, Divrei Hayamim tells about one of the kings of Yehuda, which was called Asa. That was his name. Interestingly enough, Asa in Aramaic means medicine. So that's just as a side note. So this man, this king, Asa, which was basically was a righteous king, as other kings, he had maybe had his vices, but basically he was a righteous king. And he becomes sick. At the year 39 of his kingship, he becomes sick with his legs. Ad lemala cholyo. And the sickness was coming up from his feet to his upper body. Now, it's difficult for us, obviously, to know what exactly was going on there. There are many diseases that may be connected, that may begin the feet. It may has to do with blood circulation. Many times, problems of blood circulation can begin in the feet, but it's almost, the range of possibilities is almost endless. So anyhow, be it whatever sickness he had a problem with his feet. And the Divrei Hayamim, which is written in Ruach HaKodesh, says, וגם בחוליו לא דרש את השם כי אם ברופאים. So it seems to blame him. So the Divrei Hayamim says, you know what? He was mistaken. Why? Because even, גם בחוליו, even when he was sick, and one would imagine that he would repent and better his ways and pray to God instead of instead of praying to God, instead of speaking, of asking God, לא דרש את השם כי אם בא רופאים. Instead, he was engaged with medicine, with doctors. So that seems to be a pasuk that blames someone for not going to ask refuah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and instead he was going to the doctors, which seems to be something negative in this context. So these are the sources that we are dealing with. So again, we have three sources. One says, Ki ani Hashem rofecha, I am God, I am your doctor. The second says, no, you should go to a doctor and even you can get a refund for that. And the third says that there was a problem with one of the Judean kings for going to the doctors instead of approaching and engaging with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So how are we to somewhat settle all of these sources together? How can we reconcile the differences between them? So let's go over some of the solutions that were suggested by our Mefarshim, by the commentaries, and by the great sages of old. So the first one I would like to see with you is the suggestion by the Ibn Ezra. So the Ibn Ezra, Rabbi Avraham ben Ezra, lived in Spain in the 11th century, 10th century, and he writes the following: ורפו ירפא, לאות שניתן רשות לרופאים לרפא המכות והפצעים שיראו בחוץ. So he says, when the Torah commands that one is to go to the doctor and get a treatment, and he can even demand a refund for it, that is for wounds. And he says, makot emtsaim, wounds and strikes that are from the outside. But holy, a disease which is internal in the guf, in the body itself, ביד השם לרפאותו. וכן כתוב, כי הוא יכאיב ויחבוש. So the Ibn Ezra believes that we should differentiate between different types of medical problems or situations. External wounds that can be examined and seen by the doctors, then it's up to them to treat. But internal diseases, they should not be treated by doctors, but only by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's his way to reconcile the different psukim. So the pasuk that says that God will be your healer, he speaks about internal diseases. The pasuk that says that you can go to a doctor, that speaks about external wounds. Now, why there should be a difference between what is external and what is internal? So that is explained by the Kreti and Pleti hundreds of years after the Ibn Ezra. And he has a very interesting idea. Let's read it inside. מחקרי הרופאים, he says, the research, the studies of doctors, אין בהם דבר ברור והחלטי. So that's very interesting. So he says, they cannot say anything which is without any doubts. אשר יאמר עליו כי הוא זה ברור בלא ספק. That you can say about any of the conclusion that is completely cut and dry. רק לפי שכלם ומראה עין ישפוטו. They can only judge according to the best of their opinion, according to what they can see. ולכך אמרו חז"ל, טוב שברופאים לגיהנום. So he cites here a statement which caused many pain to many people throughout the generations. So Chazal has this statement that even the best of the doctors it seems to be indicted to Gehenom, which is obviously a very strong language. And why is that? So says the Kreti ופלייטי, אף שנאמר בתורה ורפו ירפא, מלמד שניתנה רשות לרופא לרפות. So although it says in the Torah, as we saw earlier, that there is a permission for the doctor to treat his patients, התורה דיברה ממכות חוץ. The Torah spoke about external wounds, just as the Ibn Ezra. באיבר, in a hand, in a leg, שבר יד, a broken limb, או פצע וחבורה, a wound, external wound, זה מוחש. That is something that the doctor can see, and יורד עד תכליתו, and explain it, and check it carefully. ובהן, now regarding these type of problems, כמעט מופת חתוך כמופת הנדסה. So regarding external wounds, the doctors really has a good handle on what is going on, and there you can rely on them and they can rely on themselves because they have a good eye for, they can see it, they can treat it, they know what can work and what does not. מה שאין כן בחולי באיברים פנימיים, שאין עין רופא שולט בו. But when you speak about internal diseases, and obviously that was written 300 years ago, and Ibn Ezra was written 1,000 years ago, before X-ray, before CT, before ultrasound. So you have no way to see what is going on within the body. בזה ידונו כפי שכלם, there they can only speculate. וכמדומה, and they imagine, ובספק שקול, they are doubting and debating, עד כי רבים חללים הפילו, ועצומים כל הרוגיהם, so their treatments are lethal. Many people died because of the wrong treatment, because they cannot see what they are doing. כי לדברים כאלה צריך יישוב הדעת ומיתון, וכן התנאים רבים לבל ישגה חס וחלילה. So you need a lot of time, a lot of thought. Many times the doctors are the hands are loaded with work, and they cannot give the right treatment when it is not clear in front of their eyes. Now, so the real differentiation here is not between internal and external, but the real differentiation is between what the doctors really know and what they speculate. So it's very interesting, but it's a Jewish formulation of the first principle of medicine, which is the first rule is do not cause any harm. So if you are unsure of what you do, it is better to sit idle than to damage. So that's basically what they say. So if the doctors do not know what to do, it's better for them not to do anything, but only to pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If they have real data, either on external or internal wounds, obviously for Baruch Hashem, the way that medicine is advanced in leaps and bounds over the 100 years, then obviously some of the internal problems are now as external because they can be seen, as I said, in X-rays and in CT and MRI and all the rest of the ways that the doctors now use in order to be able to get a better understanding. But nonetheless, still, some things are beyond their knowledge. And there it is very dangerous if a doctor believes that he can just take a gamble on the patient's life. So that's extremely dangerous. And the first principle should be do no harm. So that is basically the way that Ibn Ezra understands. So again, if we read shortly what we just have seen, then that is correct. There are sources from which it seems that one should go to the doctor. There are sources from which it seems that one should pray to God and rely on Him. And the answer is that it depends on the nature of the problem. If the problem is one that the doctor has a good handle on, then go to the doctor. But if it is something that they don't really know and they take a risk and they take a gamble, then it is better to stay at home and pray to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is the opinion of a minority of the poskim. But we should know that it is not the opinion accepted by the majority of the poskim. And to represent here the majority opinion, I brought a tshuva from Rav Kook in his responsa, one of his responses called Da'at Kohen. And there in Siman 145, Kuf Mevhei, says Rav Kook the following: Pshatam shel divrei Chazal v'rapo yerapeh, and again he quotes the Torah and the comment of Chazal on it. Mikan shenitna reshut larofeh lerapo. There is a a permission for the doctor to heal, because it says explicitly that the injured party, as we said, can go to a doctor. So there is a permission and even an obligation on the doctor to treat his patients. שעיקר הרפואה מצד חוכמתה מסופקת. He says of Cook, everyone should know that basically, primarily, in principle, medicine is no less an art than a science. Meaning to say, it is not as physics. A physician is not a physicist, right? So he's not someone that works in physics. There are many times there are unknowns, and doctors rely on statistics. No one would fly a plane that rely on statistics. Right? We demand 100%. But when we go to the doctor, we should know that many of the decisions he made are based on statistics. That's the way the system works. And שאם היה דבר ברור, if it was so clear, obviously the doctor should have treated the patient, because there is a mitzvah, לא תעמוד על דם רעך. You're not allowed to see someone that is in a risk and not save him. So if you need a whole permission of the Torah for a doctor to operate, that is because we know that the doctor operates in an environment of uncertainty, and in which many times we do not know. And nonetheless, the doctor is allowed to do his work. The doctor is allowed to do his work even when it is not completely clear. Now, again, obviously, if most of the chances are that you are creating more damage than you are helping, then that would be completely asur. So just to give one example, interesting example, when they only began with the surgeries of heart transplantation, of removing the heart from one a patient, which obviously is in some type of a brain death, and putting it in, transplanting it into a sick patient, which needs a replacement of his heart. So in the beginning, the treatment was so dangerous that everyone that was involved in the end died. So under these conditions, the Igot Moshe Feinstein issued a declaration. I think it was in the 70s. The first doctor was in South Africa. So Moshe Feinstein issued a declaration that the doctors that are involved in heart transplantation should be regarded as roitzchim, as murderers, because they murdered both the party that they take the heart from and the party that the heart is being transplanted into. Now, obviously, there is a much more to discuss this question, and Imir Hashem will speak about transplantations somewhere in the future, Be'ezrat Hashem. But that's an example of when the risk is much, much higher than the profit or the chance for gain. So it's a question of statistics. And again, we would, Be'ezrat Hashem, have maybe a shiur about what should be the statistics for a medical treatment to be allowed, or maybe to be encouraged or recommended. So do you need 80% of success? And also when there is a difference, we speak about operations, procedures that are in order to save life. And there maybe we take more of a risk because the other side may be certain death. And the procedures that are in order to just sometimes it's not only just, but just to improve quality of life. So if it is in order to improve quality of life, what type of risk are you willing to take upon yourself? Maybe, not maybe, for sure, it's also a question of what type of improving quality of life. So obviously there are many, many, many calculations and variations and varieties that should be taken into this consideration. But nonetheless, as Rav Kook, we do not agree with the opinion that the doctor is allowed to operate only under certainty. That would, if we would take this position, that would remove too much of the doctor's ability, of the health system ability to help people. We must allow some type of a risk. Again, what would be the measure of this risk? Be'ezrat Hashem, we would we'll speak about it. But some type of risk taking or risk management is, we cannot live without it. So this first attempt at answering the question, now I'm now doing a short rehearse on what we saw, what did we see up till now. So we saw what seems to be a contradicting opinions in the Torah itself regarding, is medicine a good thing or a bad thing? Should God be our doctor, or should human beings be our doctors? We saw one attempt at answering, which is, it depends on the nature of the disease. Is it a disease that the doctor can really offer a good solution, a certain solution, or is it something that the doctor is in doubt about? If he can give a good and certain solution, that yes, go for it. But if he's uncertain, then you should only pray to God. But this position, as we said, was rejected by the majority of the poskim. So again, we go back to our question. So when or where or how should we rely on God? And where and when or how should we take a more human approach of treating diseases? Okay, so the next approach is given by Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, by the Ramban, around 200 years after the Ibn Ezra. And he has what seems to be a very, maybe surprise, maybe for some of us, approach. And he says, והכלל, the rule is, כי בהיות ישראל שלימים והם רבים. So when you have many of the Jewish people, many Jews together, והם שלמים, meaning that they are, literally meaning they are complete, but it means here that they behave in a perfect manner. So they are, shlemim here means mushlamim, so they are perfect in their behavior. They worship God, they are good to each other. When that happens, says the Ramban, לא התנהג עניינם בטבע כלל, then they are not under nature. They would not be led in a natural way. לא בגופם, not regarding their body, לא בארצם, not regarding their land, לא בכללם, not regarding the nation as a nation, ולא ביחיד מהם, and not regarding the individual. Everything would not be led in a natural way, but in a supernatural way. Meaning to say, in a direct coordination and a correlation with the spiritual state. So rain, for example, would fall not according to the climate predictions of scientists, but according to the קיום of mitzvot. כי יברך השם לחמם ומימם, ויסיר מחלה מקרבם, just as the miracles that are stated in the Torah. So when the Yam Suf was split, it was not because of some natural phenomena. It was obviously, it was not natural, it was unnatural, it was supernatural. And the Torah promises us that when we would keep God's words, אם שמוע תשמע לקולו, then there would be rain. So regardless if there would be a climate change or whatever would happen, if we would be many and perfect, which are two difficult conditions, but if we would be many and perfect, then the way that we would be led would be supernatural. עד שלא יצטרכו לרופא, and then we would not need hospitals, we would not need doctors, ולהשתמר בדרך מדרכי הרפואות כלל, we would not need any type of medicine. כמו שאמר, כי אני, do you know these diets when they promise you can eat everything and lose weight? So Ramban says, if you would be tzaddik, that would be the state. You can do everything, and you don't need medicine, and you'd be healthy. שנאמר, כי אני השם רופאך. Because God would be our healer. וכן היו הצדיקים עושים בזמן הנבואה. He says that's how things were going on. In the time of Nevuah, in the time of prophecy, when Am Yisrael the majority of Am Yisrael was in Eretz Yisrael, And basically people were behaving themselves, and we can argue about that, but basically people were behaving themselves according to God and the Torah. Then the righteous people, גם כי יקרם עוון שיכלו, even if someone would, for some sin or other, would become sick, לא ידרשו ברופאים, רק בנביאים, they would not call a doctor, they would call a prophet. כמו כעניין חזקיהו, when חזקיהו was sick, he didn't call a doctor, he called Yeshayahu, he called a prophet. Now the prophet would tell him what is the sin, you would correct the sin, and then the disease would go away. That's how it should be. ואמר הכתוב, גם בכל יום לא דרש השם כי ברופאים. That's what we saw earlier regarding Asa. Asa, instead of calling the prophet, as it was expected, he called the doctor, which was wrong. ואילו היה דבר הרופאים נהוג בהם, if it was okay, if it was allowed, if it was kosher, to call a doctor, מתם שיזכיר רופאים. Why would דברי הימים would blame him for calling a doctor? You can blame him for not praying to God, but why to blame him for calling a doctor? But it is just as you would say about someone, instead of eating matzah, you ate chametz. Not enough that you didn't eat matzah, you also ate chametz. So in the same way, he didn't call a navi, but instead he rather called a doctor, which is bad. אבל הדורש השם בנביא לא ידרוש ברופא. That's very strong language. By the way, Ramban himself was a part-time doctor, just to give us some context. But he says, someone that is in the time, in the state in which there is a majority of Am Israel and there are prophets, so we speak, it's very high conditions. But if these conditions are being met, then someone who is speaking with God, לא ידרוש בו, he doesn't speak with doctors. And even more harshly, says Ramban, ומה חלק לרופאים בבית עושי רצון השם. He says, what is even the place of doctors in the house of those who follow the will of God? אחר שהבטיח, after God had promised, that he would bless our bread and our water, and he would remove disease. So what role is left for the doctors? וזוהי כוונתם, I skipped one line, וזוהי כוונתם באומרם ורפו ירפא, מכאן שניתנה רשות לרופא לרפות. And not that the sick should go to seek a doctor, but if he's sick and he already came to the doctor, כי נהג ברפואות, because that's the way that he behaves. That's not good, but that's the way it is. והוא לא היה מעדת השם, and this sick person is not one of, when there is this condition in which the majority of the Jews are in their land and they are perfect, and the doctor should treat him if he's certified to be a doctor. אבל ברצות השם דרכי איש, אין לו עסק ברופאים. When God really is, when someone really finds favor in the eyes of God, then he doesn't need doctors. Now again, I need to emphasize and re-emphasize. Ramban does not speak about his time or about our time. He speaks about the time when there were prophets, when the people sat in their land, when they were basically doing the will of God. In our very times, Ramban completely agrees that we should go to doctors. We cannot call prophets because there are no prophets around. This time I was outside. So we need doctors, no question. But Ramban says that is all bedi'avad. That is only after the fact. So after the fact that we don't have prophecy, then yes, we need to go to the doctors. But that is not the way it should be. The way it should be is that if someone has a problem, has a disease, he knows that that's a spiritual sign sent to him by HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, and he needs to repair and correct his ways, and not to take some medicine, some pills. Taking pills only take care of the symptoms, but these symptoms are a sign to some internal spiritual problem, which is not being dealt with by the pills. So according to Ramban, what is the solution? What is the reconciling of this contradiction that we saw in the beginning. It's not as the Ibn Ezra. The Ibn Ezra said it depends on the type of the disease or the amount of knowledge that the doctors have. Ramban says, no, it depends on the era, on the time, on the period. In times in which there is prophecy, then God is our healer. In times in which there is no prophecy, then we have no other way. We need to turn to the doctors. So that's a second approach, very popular one. Very popular one. You did it, I think, many times in many. So it's the reason why it's popular is because it gives both place for turning to God, but it also gives complete room for medicine in our times. So that's why it's very popular. You see, it is able to contain both ends of the spectrum. But nonetheless, while it is a very popular opinion, we need to know that there is also a third approach. An approach that is being advanced by maybe one of the greatest men that was able to hold both being a physician and being one of the greatest halachic and ashkafic authorities of all times. And I'm speaking obviously about Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, about Maimonides, about the Rambam. So the Rambam has a very different approach. And in order to see Rambam's approach, I would like to learn with you a short, very short passage from the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim. And the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim speaks about the king Chizkiah and different things that he did, and some things he did were good, and some things he did Chachamim disagreed with. Now, one of the things that he did and Chachamim approved of was Ganaz Sefer Refuot. So Chizkiah the king took a certain book, which is called Sefer Refuot, the book of medicine, and he ganaz it. So he basically he put it to rest. He threw it, he hid it somewhere. As we say, as we put to gniza, like Sheamus and other things which need gniza. So he put it in, he maybe buried it somewhere. Anyhow, he made it disappear. Now, what is this book of medicine, and why would Chizkiah want it to disappear, and why would Chachamim approve of him making this book disappear? So Rashi says, very interestingly, why did he hidden away this book of medicine? לפי שלא היה ליבם נכנע על חוליים, אלא מתרפים מיד. So says Rashi, this book contained excellent medicines. So people would use the book and they would get cured. And instead of praying to God, the cure was so fast that no one prayed to God. That was a problem. If you have, that's what Rashi says, if you have too good of a medicine that prevents people from seeing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if they can go immediately to the doctor and be treated, and the treatment is 100% safe, then people do not do Misha Berach. They do not go to shul and pray because it's a simple thing. So we don't need God's help here. We can treat it ourselves. So says Rashi, that's why they hidden away this book of treatment, so people would need to pray to God. Now, the side effect, maybe some people really couldn't be cured and died, right? But it was more important, says Rashi, for people to be encouraged to pray. Obviously, people that prayed properly, God cured them, and people that do not, well. So that's Rashi. That goes very much according to Ramban's opinion, meaning according to Nachmanides' opinion, according to the approach that we just saw. That at least in the time when there is prophecy, and in Chizkiah time there was prophecy, people should not go to the doctors, but instead they should call the prophet, they should speak with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Rashi seems to be aligned with that approach. But Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, Rambam, so there is Ramban, which you just saw, and now we see the Rambam opinion. So the Rambam has a very different take. He says, you know what is this Sefer Refuot, this book of medicine? These were not real medicines. This was medicines for Avodah Zarah. This was a book in which it was described how you can worship a certain star in a certain time, and that would heal you. That was Avodah Zarah. That's why Chizkiah had thrown it away, and that's why Chachamim approved of it. But it was not a real medicine. And if these were real medicine, maybe it contained medicines, he says, that were sometimes poisonous. So the risk was greater than the gain. So Rambam is going to length in order to claim that this book, which was called the Book of Medicine, was not really a book of medicine. That's why it was thrown away by Chizkiah. And then Rambam adds a very important note. ולא הערכתי לדבר בעניין זה. The reason why I'm speaking at length regarding this issue, מפני ששמעתי, וגם פרשו לי, so I heard people speaking, and some of them even explained it to me, that this book of medicine was written by no other than Shlomo HaMelech. And it contained perfectly safe and efficient medicines. And people would turn to this book instead of approaching God. Now, this explanation that he's just quoting, obviously that is the explanation given by Rashi. Now, Rashi was roughly a contemporary of Rambam. So it's not that he had Rashi's Peirush maybe, but it was not only Rashi, it was something, an opinion that was moving around. So Rambam said, I heard people saying that medicine is problematic because it caused people to turn away from God. Now, see what language Rambam is using against this commentary. He says, Umilvad afsut davar. He says, this thing is zero. He's very angry. He says, that is zero. ומה שיש בו מן ההזיות. It is delusional. He says, this commentary, this explanation, written by no less than Rashi. הנה יחסו לחזקיהו ולסיעתו שהודו לו סכלות. That is stupidity. שאין לייחס דוגמתה. We cannot even believe that such a stupidity would exist. אלא לגרועים שבעם, only maybe by the worst, the most lowly people in the masses. So he says that's a exceedingly stupid, this Perush. These are very strong words. Why? Why Rambam is so angry on this explanation? He says, לפי דמיונם המשובש והמטופש, according to this stupid and corrupted imagination, אם רעב אדם ופנה אל הלחם ואכלו, שמתרפא מאותו הצער הגדול בלי ספק, האם נאמר שהסיר ביטחונו מהשם? So if someone, let's say, is very hungry, so he eats bread, would we say that he turned away from God? Why to eat bread? You should have davened to God. Why to eat bread? Hoy shotim yemer, that is stupidity. You're stupid. So it's very strong words that he's using. But basically what he says is, כי כמו שאני מודה להשם בעת האוכל, שהמציא לי דבר להסיר העווני ולהחיותני ולקיימני, כך נודה לו על שהמציא רפואה המרפא את מחלתי כשאשתמש. He says, there is no difference at all between food and medicine. Both are human bodily needs. You are hungry, take food. You are sick, take medicine. Spiritual, you should thank God for giving you food and for giving you medicine. So that's a third approach to reconcile these psukim. According to the Rambam, on one hand it says that God is the healer, on the other it says that human beings should heal. So says Rambam, that is not a contradiction. Human beings can heal because God gave them the ability to do so. But just as we thank God for the food, but we do not sit on the chair and wait for bread to fall on us from the sky, in the same manner, we should not sit on our chair and just dive into God to give us medicine. We should work to supply the medicine. We should try to develop, we should research, we should study, we should manufacture the medicine. And we should thank God for giving us the wisdom and the ability and the financial strength that is needed in order to produce the medicine. So that's a third approach. We saw the Ibn Ezra differentiating between diseases regarding which there is medical knowledge and diseases regarding which there is medical doubt. We saw the Ramban approach that there is different of times between time of Nevuah and our own unfortunate times. And now we see the third approach by Rambam, who says, no, we're speaking about two very different planes. On the practical plane, you should take medicine. On the spiritual plane, you should thank God for giving you the medicine the same way we do about food. Okay. Now there is a beautiful midrash, which basically says the same thing as Rambam. It's in the Midrash Shmuel in source tet here. Let's read it together. Maaseh Rabbi Ishmael Rabbi Akiva. So a story about Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva, the great sages, שהיו מהלכים בחוצות ירושלים. They were walking in the streets of ירושלים. והיה עמהם אדם אחד, another man was accompanying. פגע בהם אדם חולה. Suddenly they see a sick person. אמר להם, רבותיי, אמרו לי במה אתרפא. So the sick person sees these great sages, and he asks them, what is my medicine? אמרו לו, קח לך כך וכך. So they gave him a prescription. Take these pills, take this vegetable until you get healed. אמר להם אותו האיש שהיה עמהם, מי יקרא אותו בחולי? So after this sick person went away, the third man, the person that was accompanying Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Ishmael, asked them, who made this sick person sick? אמרו לו הקדוש ברוך הוא. So they said to him, God Almighty. אמר להם, ואתם הכנסתם עצמכם בדבר שאינו שלכם. הוא היכה ואתם מרפאים. So this מלווה of Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Ishmael asked them, how can it be? God brought down a disease and you are healing it? It's not up to you, it's up to him. Whoever gave the disease, he is responsible for removing it. You are not allowed to remove it by yourself. So they asked him, אמרו לו, מה מלאכתך? Tell us, what is your line of work? אמר להם, עובד אדמה אני, והרי המגל בידי. I am a farmer, and here is my tool of work. אמרו לו, מי ברא את האדמה או מי ברא את הכלם? Tell us, dear person. Who created the earth? And who created the vineyard? אמר להם הקדוש ברוך הוא, told them, obviously, God. אמרו לו, ואתה מכניס עצמך בדבר שאינו שלך? הוא ברא אותו ואתה אוכל פירין שלו? So they asked him, how can you do so? God created earth, God created the vines, and you are eating the grapes? How are you allowed to eat something which you didn't create? אמר להם, אין אתם רואים המגל בידי? Don't you see my work tools? אילולי שאני יוצא וחורשו ומכסחו ומזבלו ומנקשו. If I would not have walked the land, plow it and planted and treated and watered and then took down the fruits, nothing would have come out. So it's my work. God created land, yes. God created the vines, yes. But I'm working here. אמרו לו, שויטה שבעולם, you stupid person. That's just like the Rambam, right? You stupid person. לא שמעת, ממלאכתך לא שמעת מה שכתוב כאנוש כחציר ימיו? כשם שהעץ אם אינו נסבל ומתנקש ונחש, אינו עולה, ואם עלה ולא שתה מים ולא נסבל אינו חי והוא מת, כך הגוף הוא העץ, הזבל הוא הסם, ואיש האדמה הוא רופא. זה just the same thing. Is regarding medicine. If you want to eat in the right way, the earth and the trees, there would be no fruits. In the same way, if we would not treat the human body in the correct way and heal it, it would die. So it's just the same thing. And it doesn't mean that we are going into something that it's not up to us. It's up to us. God created us in order, He created us that we need to walk the land in order to take off the food. So we need to heal the body in order for it to function. So we see here that there are, we may say, as I said, there are 3 approaches, but basically there are 2 main approaches, which are the 2 last ones that we have described. The approach of Ramban, who in a sense sees refuah as an after the fact thing. It would have preferred that we would not have refuah, would not need doctors, would only treat diseases by approaching God. But what can we do? We are not perfect. So we need to go to the doctor. And the Rambam approach, which is no. We go lechatchila to the doctors. Why? Because that's how God created the world. That's a mitzvah. Just as He created the world that we should walk the land, so we need to walk in healing the human body. Now it's very interesting that we see in the Gemara in Brachot a machloket regarding what bracha should one do when he goes to the doctor. So see these 2 different verses. So Siud, Amar Rav Acha, it was said in the name of Rabbi Rav Acha, Hanichnas le'akiz dam, when someone goes into a medical procedure, a certain medical procedure, it should say, Yehi ratzon milfanecha, Hashem Elokai, so may it be in your will, my God, sheyehe esek zeli lerefuah, that's dealing with this thing, would really heal me, veterapeni, and you should heal me, Ki el rofe ne'eman ata, you are the faithful healer. Verefuatcha emet, and your treatment is the right treatment. Lefi she'en darkam shel bnei adam lerapot. It shouldn't have been that people would go to the doctor. Ela shenagu, but that's the minhag. So basically, Rav Acha says, when you go to the doctor, you should apologize almost before God that you go to the doctor and say, don't worry, I'm still davening to you. So it would have been preferred that they would not go to the doctor at all. But what can we do? That's the type of life that we lead. And it is, again, I want to emphasize, there is no valid opinion that says nowadays one should not go to the doctor. Everyone agrees that you should go to the doctor. But the question is, in what way should we approach it? As a neighbor thing that we must do because we are not in a perfect condition. But the real manner in which you should seek healing is by approaching God in a spiritual manner. Or Amar Abai response to that was Lo leimai nishachi. One should not say that. Should not say that I shouldn't have gone to the doctor and I asked for apologize God. No. דתני רבי ישמעאל ורפו ירפא מכאן שניתנה רשות לרופא לרפות. That is wrong. Why? Because it says in the pasuk ורפו ירפא, we should go to the doctor, not only should, look at the next source from the Shulchan Aruch. נתנה התורה רשות לרופא לרפות ומצווה היא. That is not only something that is allowed to go to the doctor, it's a mitzvah. It's an obligation, and then it takes one additional step. ובכלל פיקוח נפש, it's a פיקוח נפש. ואם מונע עצמו, if you do not go to the doctor, because you say, no, I want to pray to God. הרי זה שופך דמים. Not going to the doctor because you say, I want only to pray, in a serious case, that is as murdering. That is murder. It's a very strong word. Someone that says, I want to pray, I want to daven, and I do not, it's not important what the doctor says, because in the end, I'm davening. That is something that is shoifech damim. That's very important, a very strong statement. That's halacha. So, concluding what we saw, there are different approaches regarding the place of medic in our spiritual world. According to the Ibn Ezra, which is a rejected opinion, then the place of doctors is only when they are sure about the outcome of the treatment. According to the second approach, very popular one by Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, by Ramban, then the place of doctors is bediavad, after the fact. Meaning to say, lechatchila, and our focus should be on the spiritual realm, on praying, davening, asking God for because the healing would come from Him. But what can we do? We live in a after the sin world, so in a fallen world, we may say. So we need to go to the doctor. We must do that. But that is not the focus of our efforts. The focus of our efforts is in praying. And if our praying would be right, then God would, through the channel of the doctor, then God would give us a cure. So maybe as just a practical implication of that, one would not necessarily search for the best doctor on everything. You would go to the normal doctor, do what normal people do, and focus your attention on prayers, because when you pray properly, then God would channel the healing through whoever doctor you're going to. Just do the normal thing. Rambam says, no, that is wrong. Healing comes through the doctor. And you should focus your energy on going to the best doctor you have, being given the best medical treatment there is. And then, after Bezrat Hashem, you'll be healed. And obviously also in the middle of it, you should ask God to give wisdom to the doctor. You should ask God to heal you. You should thank God after you were healed for giving the doctor the wisdom and the ability to heal you. So these are very different approaches. Obviously, these approaches are not differentiate only in the realm of medicine. We can already see that the roots of these approaches are in very different ways to see reality. What is the place of spiritual reality? What is the place of physical reality? How they are intertwined? So very different views on medicine. There is no halacha psuka in these type of things. You would go to different rabbis or to different doctors or you'd speak with different people. And I'm sure that if I would make a poll here, I would get mixed results. And some people would feel much more convenient with the Ramban's approach, and they would say, yes, I think that our primary concern should be on our spiritual deeds and mitzvot and averot and tefillah, and just do the normal doctor way. And other people would say, no, all of your focus should be on getting the right treatment. That's the mitzvah. The mitzvah is that we should take the best medical treatment that there is. So both are valid, both are halachically correct, both are spiritually correct. What is most important, more than, as I said, you can choose if you are more identified with the Ramban or with the Rambam, or maybe 1 year that way or 1 year the other. What is mostly important is that according to everyone, we need to combine these two elements. Meaning to say, no one here says that you can just ignore the doctors. That is a mistake, that is a shtus, that's an aveira. That is, as the Shulchan Aruch says, that is shfichut damim, that is murder, to ignore doctors. On the other way, it is clear to everyone that if you only go to the doctor and you do not pray at all and you do not thank God, then that is spiritually empty. That is spiritually empty. That is not recognizing who is behind reality. Now, as we saw, the exact manner of combination is up to debate. It's up to debate. Fine. But we need to find the balance within us between these two approaches. So that is for the hashkafic fundamentals or principles of the Jewish bioethics. And Be'ezrat Hashem, next week, we'll begin to delve into a more specific questions, not only about the permission to give treatment in general, but about the halachot of giving treatments. Maybe we'd speak a little about the question of when the doctor and how the doctor is allowed to be paid for his work. And that also has to do with, obviously, with how much we believe that the doctor himself is operating, or it's God through the doctor. So all of that, in Yirtzeh Hashem, we would speak about next week. Thank you so much. And you are very much welcome. If people have questions, then they can either stay now or send through the group. And I would, as I said, I would also send the link to the YouTube channel on which you can see this shiur and hopefully additional materials through the upload as well. Have a great week. Shavua tov.